werewolf, but I'm all right now.
Don't do that, should I? Actually, you can make that gag. That's
Well,
all
I
right.
can, of course.
Can you try it? I know it's difficult, but if you can try to take us into your world a bit, because there's so much of a lack of understanding of this.
Bipolar disorder, you mean?
Yeah.
I can only speak from my own experience. I don't know what it's like for anyone else. You're quite functional when you're on meds, obviously, but for me, the main symptom was this dreadful suicidal compulsion. For no reason particularly, and or you might interpret anything as a perfectly logical reason. Do you know what I mean? It's a compulsion, almost like the cartoons. You're sleepwalking, following the ghost. That's what it's like. You've got this mad compulsion. Sometimes it's not even when you're in a bad mood. You might be in a great mood and start romanticise about suicide, you know. But it wasn't a great mood. It's all a very painful place to be. But it is an illness that you would die from if you weren't on meds, you know, because that compulsion is so enormous, you know. But what people don't often understand about mental illness, there are physical symptoms also. Like, for example, when towards the end of that tour, it got to the point where it's basically like your body is a bucket with holes in it, you're just leaking water. You can't be awake without crying. Your entire body roaring, crying for no reason, do you know what I mean? So, of course, you can't function, do you know, in that condition. So what happened was, it can take months to get sick when you come off meds. And then the difficulty for me in Ireland trying to find a doctor was, you know, how do I find a doctor who can get past, you know, whatever prejudice they might have about.
Do you think that's a real problem, do you?
Well, my difficulty was actually, sadly, that my psychiatrist was very involved in the church struggle on the other side to me.
Okay.
I had to come to England finally to find a doctor who would actually get me back on meds and get me well.
This might be a really ignorant question, and forgive me if it is, but do you see any link between your illness and your creativity?
Yeah, I do, and I have an opposite experience to most people in that I don't adhere to this thing of, you know, don't take the meds, you know, suffer for your art. I don't believe in that at all. I think that's nonsense, especially when your main symptom is, you know, suicide. That's not very creative. But my experience too is that there are useful things about bipolar disorder, positive things. You know, you can think of 100 things at the same time. You can be making up 100 tunes at the same time. You could be hearing 100 melodies at the same time. You know, what I noticed was that I didn't have it all my life. I only got it after my son, who's now 8, when he was about 5 months old, something happened, and that's when this thing developed. I noticed, yes, since then that my relationship with music is much deeper. It's some of my mates and that get a bit annoyed at me because my relationship with music is so deep that once I start listening to it, I can't stop. You know, that way I'd just be ignoring everybody or whatever.
And is it your own music you're talking about? Or
No, just all music. Just to feel music very, very deeply. Do you know what I mean? And I've always felt music very deeply, but I noticed since the development of the illness, I feel music even more deeply. So there's obviously some relationship. I hear other artists who have this condition saying that they find that quite negative. The relationship they have with their art suddenly becomes painful or difficult. I don't at all. I find it quite wonderful. I don't find it exhausting at all. I find it wonderful. It just made me really appreciate music, and music is always there for me to fall back on if there's any difficulty or even any greatness. There's always music, you know, for good things and bad things, you know. So anyway, I think it's useful if you are a musician for your relationship with music to deepen because of a mental illness, but probably not very useful if you're trying to get on with a regular job or you've got to like teach people or something and you can't stop thinking about muddy waters.
Sinead O'Connor, and she performed in the